In Old Age, Learn to be Cold. Never answer these questions. By Arthur Schopenhauer. Have you ever noticed how, over time, people change the way they treat you? Before, they sought your advice. Today, they often look at you as if you don't know anything anymore. Have you ever felt that as you've got older, you've been listened to less but questioned more? Questions come out of nowhere. Some seem simple, others uncomfortable. And almost all of them have a second meaning, an interest behind them. You are no longer treated as you were before. Even though you've experienced what many people can't even imagine of having overcome loss, pain, challenges. Now they only seem to see you as someone who has to justify their existence. But deep down you feel, these questions aren't out of curiosity, they're traps. Arthur Schopenhauer said, "The greatest wisdom seems at first glance coldness. But it's not coldness, it's protection, it's wisdom." In this video you'll discover the questions you should never answer. Question 1. How much money do you have? This question is never innocent. It comes disguised as curiosity, but deep down it carries a purpose, to find out how much you can offer, lend, or give away. The moment someone finds out how much money you have, the gears of interest start turning. They count, they wait, and they plan. They plan with your money, not theirs. First, the requests come subtly. "Will you help me just this once?" "It's just a small loan. I'll pay it back soon." But soon you find yourself surrounded by obligations that aren't yours. And if you lend once, you open the door to a queue of requests that never ends. Arthur Schopenhauer clearly observed human nature in relation to wealth. He wrote, "Wealth is like seawater. The more you drink, the thirstier you become. He who has little wants more. He who observes the wealth of others desires it even more intensely. That's why when people know how much you have, they aren't satisfied. They want more, and they want it from you." Schopenhauer also said, "Wealth is like manure. If it's spread around, it does good. If it's hoarded, it stinks." But in feisty, the real world, spreading isn't giving out of pressure. It's not sustaining someone else's thirst. Spreading is choosing how and when to use what you've earned. You've worked a lifetime. You've saved. You made difficult choices. What you have is the fruit of your struggle and should not be treated as collective property. The secret in this case is more valuable than the money itself, because what is hidden cannot be demanded. Schopenhauer warned that life is marked by hidden interests and that a great deal of suffering comes from trying to please or satisfy other people's expectations. You don't owe anyone an explanation. Your wealth, whether small or large, does not belong to others. It belongs to you. And protecting what is yours starts with silence. Say nothing. Ignore it. Change the subject. Don't feel pressured to give answers. The less they know, the less they can plan about your life, and the freer you will be. In old age, peace of mind lies in discretion. It's not about distrust. It's about wisdom. Schopenhauer also wrote, "Happiness belongs to those who are enough." And being enough means not exposing yourself to the judgment or greed of others. It means keeping what is yours under your control. Your savings are not the business of friends, neighbors, or relatives. They are your security, your freedom, your choice. So remember, silence protects, exposure weakens, and your peace is worth more than any explanation. Question 2. Who will you leave your money to? This question is never asked by chance. It sneaks up in the middle of any conversation. Sometimes it's accompanied by a smile, a gesture of affection. But behind it, there is almost always an objective, to find out if they are included in your plans. They want to know if they're going to inherit something, and if they find out they're not, their behavior changes. Suddenly, the attention wanes, the care disappears. Those who seem so concerned about you start to avoid you. Arthur Schopenhauer saw this reality clearly. He wrote, "People value other people's possessions more than their own." Many people don't care about your health, your peace, or your well-being. They care about what you can leave them. And when they realize that they won't get what they want, that they won't benefit from you, they reveal their true face. At first, they are attentive, helpful. They bring you small gifts. They call to see how you're doing, but this isn't love, it's investment. They're investing time and words, expecting a financial return. Schopenhauer also said, "The friendship of men is most often only a contract of exchange, and in old age, this exchange often revolves around inheritance. But you don't owe anyone anything. No inheritance, no promises. Your money is your choice, and the choice of who will receive it should reflect your values, your convictions, not the expectations of others. Because if you start explaining, detailing, promising, you expose yourself. And by exposing yourself, you open yourself up to manipulation. Inheritance is an intimate decision. It's not a talking point or a bargaining chip. And what's worse, by telling them your plans, you give the other person time to act, to pressure, influence, and change your decision." Schopenhauer warned, "Possession is secure when it is kept secret. So don't explain, don't detail, don't promise, keep silent. This silence isn't distrust, it's protection. It's the guarantee that your decision will be yours until the end, without interference, without judgment, without pressure. In old age, many will surround you with beautiful words, but few will have a sincere heart. Your shield is discretion. Your defense is silence. And above all, remember, those who truly love you aren't worried about what you'll leave behind. They're worried about you, your presence, your peace. The rest, they'll disappear the moment they realize they'll gain nothing. So keep your inheritance plans a secret. It's not selfishness, it's wisdom. Your money, your will, your freedom until the end." Question 3. Why don't your children visit you? At first glance, it seems like a harmless question. It could come from an acquaintance, a neighbor, even someone in the family. But in reality, this question carries judgment. It doesn't seek to understand. It seeks to make you doubt. It makes you think, have I failed as a father? Did I do something wrong? And at that moment, the guilt begins. The restlessness, the weight of questioning yourself for past choices that you may not even be able to change. Arthur Schopenhauer crudely observed the complexity of family ties. He wrote, "Children rarely forgive their parents for having brought them up. No matter how much you've done, worked, cared for, fed, loved, there are children who grow up and still drift apart. Sometimes the distance is the result of life. Routine, commitments, children of your own, problems piling up. But sometimes distance is a conscious choice. Some children forget the past, forget the care, forget the sacrifices. Others harbor silent resentments, sometimes for reasons that don't even make sense, or that have been created in their own minds over the years. But the truth is that no one has the right to judge you for this. Anyone who asks, 'Why don't your children visit you?' doesn't want to help. They want to question your dignity. And the answer to that question should not be given." Schopenhauer said, "A person's degree of sociability is inversely proportional to his intelligence, and often silence is proof that you don't need to explain yourself to those who don't understand your story, your struggle, your journey. You don't owe anyone any justification. Your family life is personal, and it's up to you alone. Give a brief, firm answer and move on. Don't give in to the temptation to open your heart to people who only want to judge, not understand. The more you try to explain, the more you expose yourself. And the less you say, the more you protect yourself, your peace, and your memory. Silence, in this case, is not escape. It's self-respect." Schopenhauer also wrote, "Life is a task that must be accomplished alone." And in old age, this truth becomes clearer. We can't always count on everyone. We won't always be reciprocated as we had hoped. But your dignity doesn't depend on the presence or absence of visitors. It depends on your inner peace. So don't let questions like this take away your peace of mind. You did what you could. You gave what you had. And that's enough. Don't explain. Don't blame yourself. The answer is yours. And your life is not a court for the judgment of others. Go on in peace, because what really matters is that you know who you are. Question 4. How old are you? This question seems harmless. It's often asked with a smile on your face, as if it's just curiosity or small talk. But pay attention. As soon as they know how old you are, they start to limit you. People hear a number and immediately make assumptions. They think you've already lived through everything, that you can no longer contribute, that you no longer have a say. that you no longer have the capacity to decide for yourself. Suddenly, your age number becomes an invisible cage. They start talking louder, explaining simple things, treating you as if you had lost the right to be heard. As if wisdom fades with time. Arthur Schopenhauer, on the other hand, saw old age as the summit of human experience. He wrote, "Old age is the time to reap what one has sown." You've spent decades building, teaching, living. Every wrinkle on your face carries a story that many couldn't bear to hear, let alone live. You are not a number. You are living wisdom. But by revealing your age, you often make room to be reduced to it, to be classified, catalogued, discarded. Schopenhauer also warned, "The opinion of others is like smoke in the wind. It doesn't matter how old you are, what matters is what you do with them. Age does not define your dignity, nor your ability, much less your freedom." And that's why this question deserves the same as so many others: silence or evasion. It's not about hiding or denying, but to protect yourself from empty judgments, from stigmas that only serve to limit you. You have the right not to answer. To not allow yourself to be cast in a role that doesn't represent you. Your age is your treasure. Protect it. Because in the end, those who really respect you don't ask to limit you. They ask to listen, to learn. They ask to listen, to learn to value. And those who want to judge you by a number they don't deserve access to your story. In old age, it's not how old you are that counts. It's who you are. What you've lived through, what you've overcome, what you've built. You don't need approval or validation. Your existence is proof enough that you have value. So when people hear your age and try to fit you in, remember Schopenhauer's words. The average man is not concerned with the time that has passed, but with what he has lost. And you haven't lost anything. You've gained time, experience, wisdom, and no one can take that away from you. Question 5. Are you dating anyone? This question seems simple. It often comes with a smile, as if it were just curiosity. But behind it, there is always a hidden expectation. If you say yes, judgment soon follows. Isn't it too soon? You should concentrate on your family. At that age, do you still want to fall in love? If you say no, the tone changes. You must be so lonely. You must miss having someone by your side. In other words, it doesn't matter what you say, you'll be judged. We live in a society that associates love with youth, as if loving were the exclusive privilege of the young, and getting older meant giving up affection, touch, and companionship. But Arthur Schopenhauer, always realistic and profound, said, "Love is an instinct disguised as poetry." In other words, love isn't something that belongs to a phase of life. It's something natural, instinctive. It's something natural, instinctive, that accompanies us as long as we live. The desire for companionship, affection, and closeness has no expiration date. Old age is not an end. It's a new phase, and often a freer, lighter, truer one. And if a new love emerges during this phase, it doesn't need approval or justification. You're not too old to love. You're not incomplete if you're alone. And you're not wrong if you choose to live together. Schopenhauer also said, "Happiness belongs to those who have enough of themselves." If you're at peace with yourself, it doesn't matter what they expect of you, whether you love or don't love, whether you're alone or in company. You don't owe anyone any satisfaction. The question, "Are you dating anyone?" is not an invitation to talk. It's often an attempt to assess your personal life, to fit you into standards that no longer make sense. And when they try to judge you for what you live or fail to live, the best course of action is not to explain yourself. The best course of action is not to explain yourself. Your happiness is not negotiable. It is yours. If you love, love in peace. If you're lonely, live serenely. True freedom is living without needing approval. Those who judge you don't understand. Those who pity you don't respect you. And you're not here to be understood by everyone. You're here to live your truth, your story, your way. In old age, every day is worth more, and every moment should be lived with what makes you feel good, and not with what others expect. So when you hear this question, remember, your personal life is not on the public agenda. Love it or don't love it, but live without explaining yourself. Question 6. Why don't you help more? This question seems to come from a place of admiration, as if you were seen as valuable, necessary, present. But more often than not, it hides demands and expectations. They think that because you're retired you have plenty of time, and that you should therefore put it at the disposal of others to look after grandchildren, solve problems, do favors, always be available. As if your life now had to revolve around the needs of others. But the truth is simple and often forgotten. You've already done your bit. You've worked for decades, looked after your children, made sacrifices. How many times have you stopped, looking after yourself to look after others? How many sleepless nights, how many worries, how many silent efforts? All this is part of your story, and that story doesn't have to continue because of what others expect. Arthur Schopenhauer, reflecting on human nature, said, "Compassion is natural, but obligation is not. Help, yes, when it's a choice, but never out of obligation, never under pressure, never because they expect you to help." Compassion comes from the heart, from the desire to do good. But when it becomes a requirement, a duty, it loses its value. It becomes a burden, a form of servitude in disguise. Old age is not servitude. It's a time to harvest, to rest, to live more lightly. You're not here to be useful to others all the time. Your time is yours now, and it is valuable. It shouldn't be filled with tasks that aren't good for you, with commitments that don't belong to you, with demands that ignore everything you've already done. Schopenhauer also wrote, "Inner freedom is the only true freedom. To be free now is to choose how to spend the time you have left. It's saying yes when you want to, and saying no when you have to. Those who respect you understand this. Those who truly love you don't use you. They don't demand your presence as if it were an obligation. So when people ask, why don't you help more? Remember, you don't have to justify yourself. Your choice to rest, to preserve yourself, needs no explanation. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. The help that is demanded is no longer generosity, and your life is now your gift. Use your time as you wish. To read, to rest, to travel, to be at peace. This time is priceless and belongs to no one but you. Old age is the time to live for yourself, without guilt, without burden, without imposed duties. Anyone who doesn't understand this doesn't understand the value of life. Question 7. What's the worst thing you've ever done? This question is never just curiosity. It presents itself as a genuine interest, almost as a form of connection. But in reality, it's judgment in disguise. They want to know your mistakes, your moments of weakness. They want you to expose your regrets, your faults. And the problem isn't just the question, but in what comes after it. Because when people tell their stories, they don't forget. They keep it, and they often use it against you. Other people's memories aren't generous. It dwells on mistakes more than victories. Arthur Schopenhauer, with his realistic view of human nature, wrote, "Memory is a mirror that reflects too much. And what is reflected clearly is rarely the best of us. It's our stumbles, our falls, the moments we prefer to leave in the past." But this question doesn't take into account that every human being makes mistakes. Everyone has a past, and many have wounds that are still healing. Reopening these wounds to satisfy the curiosity of others is not wisdom. It's unnecessary exposure. You shouldn't share your life with those who won't understand, or expose your soul to those who only want to judge. Your past is yours. It's not in the public domain. It's not a story to be told out of obligation. And if they ask, you don't have to answer, or invent, or justify, or explain yourself. Just smile and say, "I have many stories. But some things stay in the past." This phrase is not escape. It's protection. Because not everything needs to be said. Not every truth needs to be delivered into the hands of someone who can't handle it. Schopenhauer also said, "Silence is a form of greatness." And in this case, silence is a sign of wisdom. You've lived long enough to know that exposure doesn't bring peace. Peace comes from respect for your own history, from the right not to relive what has already been overcome. Life is made up of mistakes and successes, but mistakes are personal lessons, not arguments for judgment. Don't let other people's curiosity rob you of your dignity. You shouldn't confess to anything or justify your past actions. Those who respect you understand that everyone has shadows and lights. Those who don't understand don't deserve to know. In old age, protecting your peace is more important than feeding empty conversations. And the best way to protect your peace is to know when to speak and when to keep quiet. Your past doesn't define you. What defines you is who you are now. And silence sometimes says more than any words. Getting older is no longer about fighting. It's about choosing. Choosing which battles are worth your time and which ones deserve your silence. Arthur. Schopenhauer wrote, "Man is free the moment he wishes to be." And in old age, true freedom lies in not responding to everything, not explaining yourself to everyone, not pleasing those who don't respect you. Silence is not weakness. It's wisdom. It means you no longer waste your energy justifying your choices, trying to convince others of your truth, trying to be understood by those who don't want to understand you. Every time you answer, you open a door, and not everyone who walks through it comes with good intentions. The more you explain yourself, the more they question you. The more you try to justify yourself, the more you'll be judged. But the moment you choose silence, there is nothing to discuss. There is no opening for judgment. Schopenhauer said, "Inner peace comes from contempt for the opinion of others." In old age, you've lived long enough to know that not every curiosity deserves an answer. Not every question needs to be answered. Your life, your choices, your story. All this does not belong in the eyes of others. You don't owe confessions, you don't owe excuses, you don't owe explanations. What you do owe, and only to yourself, is peace. So protect your peace, protect your energy. Protect what's left of your time and tranquility. Some people don't deserve access to your thoughts. Some questions don't deserve answers. And you don't have to hand over the most valuable thing you have, your story, to those who only want to judge, use, or reassure you. To those who only want to judge, use, or manipulate it. To grow old is to become selective. Selective with words, feelings, and silence. Silence is not emptiness. It is protection. Schopenhauer concluded, "Life is a constant process of renunciation." And perhaps the greatest renunciation is the need to please, to respond, to prove something to someone. You don't need to prove anything anymore. Your life speaks for itself. Your peace is your answer, and it's priceless. If this reflection made sense to you, enjoy the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications to receive more stories and reflections like this one. That way you won't miss out on any new content. Take care and see you next time.